Craving the coffee flavor you love, but without the caffeine? Kachava's got you covered with their newest coffee flavor. This all-in-one nutrition shake delivers bold, authentic flavor, crafted from premium decaffeinated Brazilian beans. With 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, and so much more. Treat yourself to the flavor and nutrition your body craves. Go to kachava.com and use code NEWS. New customers get 15% off their first order. That's KACHAVA.com, code NEWS.
1 year on, Mark Carney pitches a wealth fund amid questions about affordability. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Deeper than the headlines.
The answers you need to know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
The nation's finances will be in focus this week as the Liberal government, led by Prime Minister Mark Carney, marks 1 year since last April's big win in the federal election. The first anniversary of that victory is tomorrow. And the Liberals' hold on things in Ottawa has only improved since then, moving from a minority government to a majority government through wins in by-elections and by luring 5 MPs to cross the floor. A new poll from the Angus Reid Institute, timed to coincide with this first anniversary, suggests Canadians are generally happy with the government they have. But there's one glaring exception, and that's dealing with affordability issues, with the Carney government getting low marks on making progress on housing affordability and at reducing the cost of living. At an event in Ottawa this morning, Prime Minister Carney said the government is doing things to bring costs down.
They will notice on June 5th when they get a check for more than $500 for the groceries and essential benefit. They may not notice, but they are getting in their account the benefits of the middle class tax cut the 22 million Canadian taxpayers benefit from, which was the first thing this government did. They will notice, and they did notice the day after we cut the federal fuel excise tax, that the price at the pump here in Ottawa went down 12 cents. So all of these things, and they may not notice or associate with them, but they certainly would notice if they benefit from childcare, the Canada Child Benefit, the dental care program, pharmacare. All of these programs that this government is absolutely dedicated to.
At that same Ottawa event, the Prime Minister announced his government plans to create a sovereign wealth fund. It will be called the Canada Strong Fund. Mr. Carney told reporters the fund will invest in major projects and that individual Canadians will be able to make contributions and own a piece of the action.
For those Canadians who want to participate in an even more direct way, we will make it easy for individual Canadians to invest in the fund and therefore own a small piece of nation-building projects and share in their returns. The fund will be professionally managed and operate as an arm's-length independent Crown corporation. And we'll consult over the coming months on the specific aspects of the fund. But one thing is sure. It will be accessible to everyone, not just a few. Because the Canada Strong Fund is about solidarity amongst Canadians, no matter where they live. So whether a project is in Alberta, Quebec, or in the far north, high north, all Canadians will have a stake. Because this is about ensuring that you and your children and your children's children benefit from the prosperity that we are creating today.
Many countries have sovereign wealth funds. Among the best known is Norway's wealth fund, which is said to have $1.7 trillion US in assets. The UAE has several wealth funds, such as the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority and the Investment Corporation of Dubai. There's also the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia with roughly $1 trillion in assets. The federal government's initial investment into this fund will be $25 billion. That announcement came ahead of what will be big news on the fiscal front tomorrow. Tomorrow is the spring economic update, like a mini budget that used to happen in the fall, but under Prime Minister Carney, it's been moved to the spring. The Minister of Finance will deliver that statement, And Francois-Philippe Champagne released a video statement this weekend previewing what he plans to talk about.
Our new government is doubling down on efforts to tackle long-term structural challenges, generational investment in infrastructure and productivity, strengthening Canada's investment climate, and making economic growth a clear priority. And the world is noticing. Investments are up, trades export are up, and in 12 months we've signed 20 strategic trade and defense agreements with allies. The Spring Economic Update is our plan to keep that momentum going, all while making life more affordable for Canadians today and for years to come.
Budget watchers expect the mini budget will show a deficit that is lower than originally expected because government revenues are higher because of higher oil and gas prices. In the November budget last fall, the forecast for the budget deficit was expected to be more than $78 billion. Speaking in Toronto over the weekend, Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre said the government's deficit is still too high. He called on the Carney Liberals to cap the deficit at something closer to $31 billion, as he predicted the government will have shoveled money out the door during what's known in Ottawa as March Madness, spending in March that hasn't shown up on the government's books yet.
Right. Wait till March comes. March is always with the Liberals, they have something called March Madness. And I think your numbers go up to February, right?
Yeah, February.
Yeah. Wait for March Madness. That's when Liberals like to push all the money out the door to their friends, and that's when the deficit goes soaring. Remember, Justin Trudeau left office anticipating a $31 billion deficit for this year. Let's see what Mark Carney has, because we all thought that it was impossible for anyone to spend more recklessly than Liberal Justin Trudeau, and then along came Mark Carney and said, hold my champagne.
Ahead of tomorrow's Spring Economic Update, Mr. Poilievre also called on the Prime Minister to end what he calls credit card budgets.
Outside of COVID, Carney Liberals are running the biggest deficit in Canadian history and the highest spending as a share of GDP since 1996. He promised to spend less on bureaucracy. Spending on bureaucracy is up 7.4%. On top of more spending for consultants. Day-to-day operating spending is up 9.1% in 11 months. This is Carney's credit card budgeting. He's putting the nation's spending on the credit card, and he's forcing families to put their personal spending on their personal credit cards to pay for his high cost of living.
According to the debt clock calculated by the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, the national debt of Canada is nearly $1.3 trillion. That's a personal share of almost $31,000 for every single Canadian. The national debt grows by $110 million each and every day, and annual interest payments on that national debt now total about $55 billion a year. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
Across the province of Nova Scotia, roughly 3,000 workers at the province's long-term care homes are on strike. These workers have been without a collective agreement since 2023. The strike is now into its third week. For a look at some of the issues, we're joined by Loppie, Vice President, Young Workers for CUPE Nova Scotia, from the Communications Office for the CUPE Long-Term and Community Care Committee. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Why are these workers on strike?
Because we saw the deal that the government offered us, and our workers said no, because our lowest paid members deserve better.
What kind of jobs do these workers do in the long-term care homes?
So we have CCAs and nurses, along with housekeepers, maintenance, activity aides, hairdressers, ward clerks, dietary aides, and everyone else in between.
Okay. So CCAs are what? Sorry, I'm not familiar with that.
CCAs are continuing care assistants.
Continuing care assistants. Okay. Thank you. So what, given that this strike continues, what services are being maintained during this strike and what services have been withdrawn?
So some of the facilities, they have different classifications. So non-essential workers are slightly different from nursing home to nursing home, but the essential workers are nurses, the CCAs, and nutrition and environmental services. So they're maintaining the necessities for our residents to maintain their quality of life while still having a meaningful impact on the strike.
Okay. So what's not being done then?
Recreational therapy, hairdressers, so haircuts aren't happening. Physiotherapists and occupational therapist assistants aren't working. And we have less housekeepers in the building. So housekeepers that would normally work on one unit are now covering multiple. So cleaning has been at the bare minimum.
Okay. So what are the big issues for your members at CUPE? What are the big issues?
Short staffing, which is a result of being overworked and underpaid. Regardless of the classification, if you're short staffed, it affects everyone else in the building. So it's a domino effect. And we're having a hard time retaining workers because people can't afford to live on the wages that they're making. So they're either working multiple jobs or finding work elsewhere.
Okay. So staffing, you want the government to what? Hire more staff?
Well, you can't hire more staff if you don't pay people enough.
If you don't pay people. Okay. So what sort of raises would you like to see? What sort of pay increases are you asking for?
When we went into negotiations, we originally asked for a $5 increase for all classifications. The government immediately said no to that. So now we're at the point where we're open to negotiating a better wage than what is being offered. So for our lowest paid members who make $18.77, the government offered them a $2.25 increase over a 4-year contract, which is not enough.
A total of a little more than $2 over the next 4 years would have been the raise. Okay, I see. Yeah. All right. What talks are scheduled? Are any talks scheduled or any talks happening? What can you tell us?
So CUPE is ready to go back to the table at any point. We've made the request, but the government has been ignoring us. There is no word on when they plan to go back to the table with us.
Would you describe both sides as being far apart?
I think so. I think since the beginning of negotiations, the government had continued to bring forward the exact same package for 5 negotiation meetings. CUPE has made adjustments on their package to try and meet the employer halfway, but that has not worked, which is why we're on strike.
The Nova Scotia government says it's made your members a fair offer in line with what other long-term care agreements look like across the country. What's your reaction to that?
So the offer that I believe 27 other nursing homes in Nova Scotia accepted are non-CUPE, and they accepted a Me Too clause, which means if CUPE negotiates a better deal, they also get that deal. So it's misleading, implying that if other facilities can accept the offer, how come CUPE can't?
I understand. What would be your message to the residents or the families, family members who may have residence in these facilities? What would you say to them?
I would thank them for the support that they have shown us, and I hope that they will continue to support and trust us to get a better deal.
Okay. We are watching it. Thank you for your time today. All the best.
Thank you.
Yeah. From CUPE, Nova Scotia, Ty Loppie. 3,000 long-term care workers on strike in that province. Dozens of homes impacted. This is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
Looking at the financial markets at midday. Stock prices are down for the most part, but not by much. Just small losses, really, 0.1% today. The oil price is a little bit higher. It's up by 2%, with West Texas at 96.32 US a barrel. The Toronto Stock Main Index down about 125 points right now, and the Canadian dollar is at 73.45 cents US. Some gas prices were increased in recent days over the weekend, most notably across Nova Scotia, where the interrupter clause was invoked again. So gas prices took another jump and are back above $1.80 at 184.3 in most places in the Halifax area right now. Diesel prices around $2.13 a liter or so. That's about 25 cents or so higher than what they're paying in Calgary. Just to put that in some perspective for regular unleaded, $1.60.8 is the gas price, average gas price in Calgary, according to 660 News Calgary. If you're ever looking for a podcast of our show, now you know with Rob Snow, there's a great new mobile app that will help you hear our show when you want to. Listen live, listen to the podcast. It's called the Seeker app. That's Seeker, spelled Seekr, and it has all kinds of exclusive audio that you won't hear anywhere else. News, music, and sports. And you can download Seeker for iOS or Android. That's Seeker, spelled Seekr. And now you know with Rob Snow's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It was a busy weekend in sports. The Toronto Blue Jays are now just 3 games below 500 after taking 2 out of 3 from the Cleveland Guardians. Toronto scored 2 runs in the first and added 2 more in the 6th inning yesterday for a 4-2 win. Looks like Jeff Hoffman is not the Jays closer anymore. He has struggled in that role so far this season. He pitched in the 8th inning yesterday and then set things up for Louis Varland to come in and register the save. Toronto right back at it tonight at home again, opening a series against the Boston Red Sox. The Red Sox are sitting in last place in the American League East right now. The Jays are in second last place. Dylan Cease will be on the mound for the Jays tonight. I noticed Trey Savage could get his first start of the season tomorrow. Game time tonight, 7:07 Eastern Time. And as always, catch all the Jays action on Sportsnet, Sportsnet Plus, and all across the Blue Jays radio network. Rogers owns the Toronto Blue Jays, and Rogers also owns this radio station. Where we're going to talk politics coming up next. Tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary of the Liberals' 4th election victory in a row. Some news today from Mark Carney on the creation of a sovereign wealth fund. Much to discuss when we return, right after the latest breaking news here on News Radio. It's time for our Monday News Day panel. Deirdra Tindale is back with us, Vice President at Crestview Strategies. Welcome back, Deirdra. Great to hear from you today.
Thanks so much, Rob. Happy to be here.
And Matthew Dube is back as well. He's Vice President of Proof Strategies. Matthew is a former NDP MP. How are you? Welcome back.
Good. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. Well, happy anniversary if you are a Liberal, I suppose. The last federal election was held 1 year ago tomorrow, April 28th. And we all know how it turned out and how it's turned out since then. What would you say, Deirdra, have been some of the highlights of the new Liberal government in the last year?
I would probably agree with the respondents of a poll issued today, which gave the government a passing grade on international relations, but a failing one on affordability issues, which remained the number one priorities for about more than half of the people who answered that particular poll. I think we've all talked at length about the many trips that the Prime Minister has taken, the agreements that have been signed, but really the lack of connection to anything improving with respect to affordability here at home for Canadians. So I do think that as they look to year two, they probably need to consider how they can do a better job of adapting the Conservative Party's playbook with respect to affordability, because on that topic, you know, the Conservatives still seem to have a better grasp on what is actually impacting Canadians.
Okay. What would you say some of the highlights of the new Liberal government have been in the last year, Matthew?
Yeah, I think it's things that are more symbolic than tangible at this stage, which is, you know, some might say it's only been a year, and others might say that's not a great thing after a year. Excuse me. I think definitely the fact that international relations is absolutely one. I would agree on that point for sure. I've heard folks saying, you know, privately in the space, in the you know, diplomats from other countries, for example, mentioned that Canada's leadership seems to be taken more seriously on the world stage than it maybe was before, which I guess is somewhat ironic after Justin Trudeau proclaimed that Canada was back in 2015. So definitely, I think something positive. I think Mark Carney's more serious approach on the international stage is one that seems to be welcome. And for some, that might be more welcome at home too, right? I think the big thing from last year's election was, I think, a desire from Canadians to have an adult in the room, given the way President Trump behaves and conducts himself, and particularly how it was impacting Canada. And so I think on that front, it's been a success. And I would also say, and this is just pure political machinations, I think having a caucus that still overwhelmingly is composed of MPs who were elected, not counting the floor crossers, obviously, but who were elected under Justin Trudeau's leadership, but sort of rebranding the party in such a major way. I mean, folks like myself might accuse them of being quite mercenary in that respect, but it's definitely been a successful political rebrand. There's no doubt about that.
Okay. So, Deirdra, you mentioned cost of living issues, and that certainly comes through loud and clear in this Angus Reid survey that's out this morning, that's where most of the disappointment lies. Where else do you think the government has fallen short of expectations?
Well, I mean, Matthew raised the U.S. issue, and I think that was the first thing that most Canadians expected the Prime Minister to deal with. He had given himself some imposed deadlines. We no longer talk about those because they're much further behind us than they are in front of us at this stage. So I think that and any real tariff relief continues to be problematic for Canadians whose jobs have been impacted and the industries who are having to pay those additional tariffs. And I think, you know, things like the defense spending, again, slow to actually move the money. Great announcements, welcomed by many, including our allies in the NATO community. But you have small and medium companies who are saying for all the furor that it caused initially, you know, they're not actually seeing contracts yet. They're not seeing dollars flow. So there needs to be a bit of pace now to what this government is doing.
What do you think on shortcomings, Matthew?
I would say on the environment, I would echo certainly what Deirdra said about you know, the Canada-U.S. issue and the impacts there. But I want to speak to the environment in particular. I think you know, obviously, you know, a lot is made of all the politics around the relationship between Alberta and the federal government and Stephen Guilbeault and all that. But I think it's broader than that. I think it's definitely not a priority right now. And some might argue that, well, sure, you know, the cost of living and all these things, you know, the environment takes a back seat, and I don't disagree with that. But at the end of the day, climate change is still happening. It's still an issue, and I think the federal government still has a responsibility to be tackling that, even while tackling all these other, perhaps more pressing in the immediate issues that are impacting Canadians. So, and it's pretty clear that despite where Mark Carney has stood on that issue before, you know, being the UN envoy on climate change, you know, some of his other proclaimed positions on the issues in the past. I think, you know, and I'm not taking exception to some of the specific policies. You know, you think of getting rid of the carbon tax and things like that. I think there's a lot of arguments that progressives can make around getting rid of policies like that and justifying it. I think it's the fact that there's been nothing else on that front. It's really just radio silence on the environment. And I also wonder how that'll impact with this caucus in the long run, because there are MPs in this caucus who believe that in the Liberal caucus rather, that believe that that's an important issue and amongst their base, and who represent parts of the country where that remains an important issue. So as we weather the storm on Canada-U.S. issues and cost of living, it'll be interesting to see where that issue stands, because I do think it's been a big blind spot for this government that people should be paying attention to.
Okay, very good. When we come back, the spring economic update will be offered up tomorrow. Talk about themes to expect from Francois-Philippe Champagne, the Minister of Finance, tomorrow. I'm Rob Snow, talking politics on a Monday. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
With our Newsday panel, Matthew Dube is here from Proof Strategies, Deirdra Tindale from Crestview Strategies. Spring economic update tomorrow. Used to be the fall economic update, fall economic statement, the FES, but now it's the spring economic update under Mr. Carney. What are you expecting the themes will be from the finance minister tomorrow? Mr. Dube, what are you expecting?
Well, I'm imagining there'll be some managing of expectations. I think there's still a lot of outstanding stuff from the budget that hasn't really been fully resolved yet. You know, you think of cuts to the public service and things of that nature, where it's kind of been teed up, but there's still some details that need to be sorted out. And obviously that has an impact on what this ultimately is, which is a economic update and fiscal outlook. And part of that is government spending. So there'll definitely be, I think, some, one would hope at least, I would expect further clarity on that. And then obviously a lot of maybe more clarity, and maybe we'll discuss it more in detail, but around some of the things that have been announced like today, right? This Canada Strong Fund. I mean, it seems to be lacking in detail. So I imagine we're starting to breadcrumb some of the stuff that'll be in the update tomorrow. And again, I think it's going to be just really about managing expectations and positioning things, because I think that's the theme, right, of the last couple of weeks of this government. I think back to the Prime Minister's video that he posted a couple of weekends ago, where it kind of seems to be preparing people for, tough times. That's not the language that was used, but that's certainly the vibe, as the kids would say, that was being given off there. And I would expect to be a bit more of that tomorrow. Hopefulness, Canada Strong, and all those usual things, but also sort of with a lens to the fact that we're not out of the woods yet on a litany of issues.
Okay. What are you expecting to hear tomorrow, Deirdra Tindale?
Well, this moving from building Canada Strong to building Canada Strong for all together, to me suggests that we might be hearing less about the new government bureaucracy that has been established, and moving to a place where the government is speaking to everyday Canadians. To the point earlier, is this now where the government starts to get into more retail politics, talk a bit about more how they're going to be helping Canadians? I think the point is valid around what was the Prime Minister really trying to do with that YouTube video called Forward Guidance. It felt like we were being prepared for something, but we don't know exactly what. There's also been a suggestion that the deficit tomorrow will come in lower than was projected last fall. So what will that ultimately do in terms of inspiring confidence in further investment in consumer spending? And then, yes, details about what has actually transpired with Canada's finances since the budget last fall, and definitely more details of this new sovereign wealth fund.
And just on that was the big announcement today. What do you think of that idea? The Canada Strong Fund, Deirdra. We're going to have a national sovereign wealth fund. The Prime Minister announced that today in Ottawa. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I thought it was interesting that the Prime Minister said in his remarks that Canadians want to get involved in building the country. And I would suggest that if you ask any company that's currently awaiting a project approval, a permit, any funding from government in order to create jobs and actually provide its own contracts to local businesses, that yes, there are a lot of Canadians who want to be involved with building the country, who might not feel that it was necessary to create a sovereign fund in order to do that.
I would say it's very on brand for Mr. Carney to be pitching a sovereign wealth fund, I have to say. The former Goldman Sachs employee, the former governor of two central banks. Hey, we're going to start a sovereign wealth fund. What did you think of that announcement today, Matthew?
Well, in principle, it's not a bad idea. I mean, I'm from Quebec with the Caisse de dépôt et placement, basically the pension fund that helps fund major projects. That's been, some might argue, nitpick some examples and say it's been hit and miss. But I think when you have a mechanism that helps fund major projects and that sort of rolls with an investment that benefits the public, the shareholders, as it were, and in that particular example, pensions, I think it can be positive. But in this instance, there's a lack of detail, I think, that makes it unclear. I think if it's just going to be sort of an ATM for, private sector businesses looking for, a handout in order to invest in the country, I don't know if that's necessarily the right mechanism. There's plenty of other mechanisms that exist, and ultimately that would just be a substitute for government granting. We've kind of seen that with the Canada Infrastructure Bank. I think that the record of that bank since it was implemented 10 years ago is mixed at best for doing that. And I also think it begs the question, we've talked on this this segment about bureaucracy and the Prime Minister putting more of it forward. It's kind of odd to me at a time where you're cutting the public service that you're creating another crown corporation or whatever structure this is going to have with a CEO and all this. It kind of begs the question, like, if that's what you're going to do, then just do government funding and have it run by the existing public service. So a lot of questions, I think, that need to be answered on all those different fronts.
Okay. When we come back, we'll talk a little. Sorry, Deirdre, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Deirdre.
I was going to say, a fund like this is usually established when you have excess funds. And what we're hearing is talk of deficits. So it's also going to be interesting to just understand a bit more, where exactly is the money going to come from? And to Matthew's point, they had to say already that they're going to be reclarifying mandates as a result of this new fund being created with the existing mechanisms federally. So it does feel a lot like duplication for duplication's sake at this point.
Okay, when we come back, we'll talk a little about the Conservative Party, kind of where things stand right now with the Conservatives. And it's official, the NDP will soon be down an MP. Their only MP in Quebec, Alexandre Boulris, is going to run in the provincial election in Quebec this fall. So that's it. That's the end of whatever is left over from the orange wave of 2011 for what was then the latent NDP. We'll be right back. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
Here with Deirdra Tindale, Vice President, Crestview Strategies, Matthew Dube, Vice President, Proof Strategies. For our Monday Newsday panel, Deirdra, in a series of interviews recently, former Conservative Party leader Erin O'Toole suggests the current Conservative Party needs to moderate some of its positions, avoid culture war topics. What do you think of that?
I know what many in the opposition leader's office probably think of it. And it's always a question of, if this is your party, if what you're saying publicly is actually helpful. I think there will be, a certain extent of people who will feel this is an element of sour grapes, and Mr. O'Toole perhaps wanting to align with the Prime Minister after having been appointed to the Prime Minister's U.S.-Canada Advisory Council. But the reality is that if the Conservative Party is speaking about people who have chosen to cross the floor, for example, these were their former colleagues who ran under Conservative banners and who frankly do owe their constituents an explanation. So we are talking about the fundamentals of democracy. And so I do think there is room for debate around that. In terms of culture wars and, talking about influencers, it's not that long ago that a lot of people were saying how great it was to see Pierre Poilievre finally giving interviews, not only to mainstream media, but to other people to help broaden the movement. So it felt a bit like a weak argument to be making at this particular moment in time.
Okay. Very quickly, Matthew, what do you think about that?
Well, listen, I think it speaks to the moment. I think it's not just reading tea leaves; it's reading the polls. I think it's an easy conclusion to come to, but I think ultimately, obviously, there's very little that I agree on with Pierre Poilievre. It won't surprise you, but I think it has more to do with style than it has to do with necessarily the message. I think that the sort of more, aggressive style, prioritizing podcasts, even seeing Andrew Scheer out there so much as a former leader who's quite polarizing. I think that's where they have a bigger challenge, I think, than what issue set they're speaking to, because there is an audience for the focus on affordability and the like that the Conservatives have prioritized. So maybe some thinking on style would be more my advice, but I definitely understand where Mr. O'Toole's coming from.
Okay, we only have about 2 minutes left. Alexandre Boulris is going to leave the federal NDP and run provincially in Quebec for Quebec Solidaire, the left-wing nationalist party, sovereigntist party. Prior to the Orange Wave in 2011, that was a Bloc stronghold, but Boulris has held this riding, Rosemont. What is it? Rosemont Le Petit Patrie, I believe it's called.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, do you think the NDP could hold that without him, or could that go to another party? There's going to have to be a by-election, obviously. What do you think, Matthew?
Well, my friends and former colleagues won't like me saying this, but no, the answer is no. Alexandre is a great organizer, but obviously the party's struggled mightily over the last few years in Quebec. And without him there, it very much, like so many NDP seats, was one that was being held due to the hard work of the local MP. It's hard to believe it'll be 15 years this Saturday since we all got elected in 2011. So I don't know where the time's gone, but it's a big loss for the party. There's no doubt about that. But after 15 years, I can appreciate why, even though he's running again, the provincial legislature is just not as busy as it is in Ottawa. They sit 2 days less a week, longer sittings and the like. And Alexandre's watched his kids grow up from afar in Ottawa, right? So I can appreciate wanting to recalibrate and focus on a different issue set like healthcare and education.
Sure thing. All right. We'll have to stop there. Thank you so much, Deirdra Tindale. Good to hear from you this week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rob.
From Crestview, and Matthew Dube from Proof Strategies. Thank you as well. Talkback
Thanks, Rob.
is coming up next here on News Radio. Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today's topic, the government's balance sheet, the government's finances. We have many questions about the financial position of your federal government that we would like to ask you today as we start another week of Talkback together. 1-833-668-2577 is our call-in line to share your opinion. Let's start with today's big news. The federal government under Prime Minister Mark Carney will create what it is calling a sovereign wealth fund. It is going to be called the Canada Strong Fund. The Prime Minister revealed that by posting a video on YouTube, and he later expanded on this idea during an event in Ottawa this morning. But from his YouTube channel, this is how Prime Minister Mark Carney described this sovereign wealth fund, or the Canada Strong Fund. Roll the tape.
This is our country. It's your future, and we're building it together. We're catalyzing a series of nation-building projects in energy and trade, critical minerals, transport, data, and beyond. These projects will make Canada stronger, more resilient, and more independent. They'll create good jobs and grow our economy, providing the resources that we need to take care of ourselves and take care of each other. And to make sure that all Canadians can share in these benefits, we're creating the Canada Strong Fund, Canada's first sovereign wealth fund. The Canada Strong Fund will invest alongside the private sector in nation-building projects to create wealth for Canadians today and our kids tomorrow. And if you have a bit of extra money, we'll make it easy for you to invest in the fund to help build Canada Strong for all. Canadians are choosing to buy Canadian, to explore Canadian, and build Canadian, because it's our country, and we're building our future together.
So, a sovereign wealth fund, the Canada Strong Fund. So right off the top, what do you think of that idea? What do you think of that idea? Canadian Sovereign Wealth Fund. The Prime Minister calls it the Canada Strong Fund. Good idea? Do you have some reservations, maybe some concerns about this idea? The goal of the fund, as you heard, to invest in Canada and offer shareholders a return on that investment, and you will eventually be able to get a share of your own. What do you think? And where should the government invest the money that comes from this sovereign wealth fund? What would give the country bang for the buck? What would a good investment be? Pipelines? High-speed rail? Data centers? Space technology? Renewable energy? EVs? I mean, it's sure to be billions of dollars right off the top, $25 billion. Who knows? Someday maybe it grows to hundreds of billions of dollars. But where should the money go? Where would it do the most good? Hydro dams, ports, airports? Or should some of that money be spent on what someone would call social infrastructure, more affordable housing or healthcare or childcare? What do you think? I mean, there are no wrong answers. Just give us some ideas. And the Prime Minister says if you have some spare cash, you can invest your own money into the sovereign wealth fund. Get a piece of the action. Do you have any extra cash? If you did, is this what you would do with it? Invest in the country's sovereign wealth fund? Mr. Carney called it today the People's Fund. It's going to be your fund. That's what he said. You can have a stake in it. You can buy into it. Get a little piece of it. How open are you to that idea? And where should the money go? That's an interesting topic to start the week. Now, here's another one. On the state of the finances of the government, tomorrow it's the mini budget. It's the spring economic update. That's always a big deal in political Ottawa. The Minister of Finance will stand up in the House of Commons and talk about all the great things the government is doing with all of your hard-earned tax dollars. But the annual deficit, we know, is going to be tens of billions of dollars. Nobody knows the exact number right now. We'll find out tomorrow. The last forecast was for a budget deficit of $78 billion. It's going to be lower than that, but it's still going to be a big number. Tens of billions of dollars. The national debt of Canada is about $1.3 billion, and the interest payments on the national debt is costing every Canadian $55 billion a year in interest payments. In the last several years, the national debt and the interest on that debt has been one of the fastest growing line items on the balance sheet of the government. It's a lot of red ink. Big deficits and a national debt of $1.3 trillion. But when you hear these numbers, because they're all very big numbers, do you care? Does it bother you? Does it trouble you at all that the federal government keeps running such large deficits and that the national debt is $1.3 trillion? And if you think these numbers are far too high and that the government should not be spending so much money and borrowing so much money, what would you cut? When you listen to the Conservatives, for example, they say the government shouldn't be doing projects like the Alto high-speed rail project because it's going to cost too much money. The Conservatives say the government spends too much money on foreign aid and that foreign aid spending should be cut dramatically. The Conservatives say the federal government spends way too much money on consultants, high-priced consultants from big consulting firms who are essentially doing the same work that could be done by federal government employees already on the payroll. Those are just a few examples of what the Conservatives are putting in the window, places where the government can cut. What do you think? A $1.3 trillion national debt, an annual deficit in the tens of billions of dollars year after year, interest payments, $55 billion a year. But do you care? Does it bother you at all? If you think spending should be cut, what would you cut? If you had a chance to take a buzzsaw to government spending, what would you cut? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577 is our call-in line. If you've never called before, just mention that. We'll make your call a priority. And let's talk about the government, its balance sheet, your pocketbook, where money should be going and maybe not going. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. It's Talkback. on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
This is a big story today. The Sovereign Wealth Fund ahead of tomorrow's fiscal update. We're talking government money today on Talkback. It's a top story on all the major news sites, from City News to Global News to CBC to CTV, Toronto Star, Financial Post. Wealth Fund, Sovereign Wealth Fund, Canada's new Sovereign Wealth Fund, $25 billion, quote-unquote, endowment. What do you think of that idea? What do you think of that idea? Is it a good idea? Mr. Carney says, if you have a little money, stashed aside somewhere, you could own a piece of these Sovereign Wealth Fund. What do you think of that? Is that something that you're interested in? Where should the money go? What would offer the best bang for the buck? And we can also talk about the government's balance sheet, $1.3 trillion national debt, $55 billion a year in interest payments, an annual budget deficit in the tens of billions of dollars. But do you care? There was a time when Canadians cared about budget deficits. Is that time over and done with? Or do we need to cut spending? And if you think we should cut spending, what should we cut? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Who do we have? Is it Joe in Kitchener up first? Joe?
Hey, Rob.
Yeah, hi, Joe.
I think that sovereign fund is a great idea, especially if they give me a tax break for every dollar that I put into it. You could attract a lot of investment into that. And imagine, if you will, if we didn't have 10 years of the stupid clown and we had a pipeline right now all the way to the coast. Can you imagine how much of a world power we would be energy-wise in the face of this Iran war, which is just crushing everybody? But no, we had the stupid clown for 10 years and we don't have a pipeline. We never had any hope of getting a pipeline under him. So now we have an opportunity. And if that is one of the things on that sovereign fund list, I'm all for it.
Okay, you think that would be a good project to pursue? Maybe more than one pipeline, Joe. Maybe to both coasts,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, and you'd be interested. Let's say they're going to outline tomorrow, Joe. They're going to outline how exactly this is going to work and how you could get in on the action, so to speak. Would that be something that you'd be interested in?
Absolutely. And, another thing, high-speed rail. We're like in the dark ages in Canada. When you go over to Europe, you can take a high-speed train from one city to another and be somewhere where it take you normally 10 hours, be there in like 3 or less. They are so far in advance of us when it comes to infrastructure and transportation. It's ridiculous. We're in the dark ages. So I'm down for something like that is included in that fund.
Okay, because there are a lot of critics of the high-speed rail project because it's going to cost, well, who knows what it's going to cost by the time it's all said and done. But thank you, Joe. You've got us off to a good start. To Southern Alberta we go. Linda's up next. Hi, Linda.
Hello.
Hi, Linda. Yep, you're on the air,
Hi.
Linda. Go ahead.
Yeah. As far as that welfare fund or whatever you want to call it,
Sovereign
you
Wealth
really
Fund.
irritated me with that line of, if you have a little bit of spare free money hanging around, well, who has that? Not the average working person.
Not
and
too many
90%
people.
And we're already paying tax dollars, right? We've already invested more than enough. So I'm not in favor of that at all. And as far as these high-speed rails, well, that's for just the very few from one province, right? So I'm not in favor of that.
It would be two provinces. It would be two provinces, Linda, but it would also be where more than half the population lives. More than half the population lives between Quebec City and Toronto.
Yeah, for Ontario and Quebec, right? Or Quebec and Ontario.
Sure.
Yeah, that's
to your point,
right?
It doesn't serve your community, right?
No, and even the one that would
be,
and even the one that our premier once put in from Calgary to Edmonton. That doesn't serve a lot of people except for those going to Calgary and Edmonton.
Right.
On a daily basis, maybe. But yeah, and as far as chainsaw, well, I'd take a chainsaw to the government itself. The auditor.
But what I want to get at is, there used to be a time, in the mid-'90s and during the Harper years, people really did care about deficits and that they believed that the government should balance the budget. It doesn't seem to be a big cause for concern these days.
Well, I don't know. Maybe somebody's whitewashed it for years, but no. And I think there should be, when the Auditor General gives you a scathing report, you should have to fix it, not hide it.
Okay. All right, Linda, thank you. And we're off and running for Talkback for another week. Government financing and government finances, our topic today. Sovereign Wealth Fund, the very first sovereign wealth fund for the entire country, is going to be created by the Carney government, the Canada Strong Fund. Let's kick that around for a while. And tomorrow, we will learn more about the size of the budget deficits and the size of the national debt and how much we're paying a year on interest payments to service that national debt. But do these debt levels trouble you at all? This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Lots of lines available there for you folks to join the discussion today. Government finances, a big topic today, will be all week. We had the Prime Minister announcing a sovereign wealth fund. Government's going to create a sovereign wealth fund, and you can get a piece of the action if you have any extra cash laying around. And tomorrow will be the big reveal on the state of the government's finances, which we know are deep in the red. But do you really care? Do you really care? Is what I want to know. That the government is running such massive budget deficits and that the national debt is $1.3 trillion. Is that something that troubles you in the least? 1-833-668-2577. Greg is in Halifax. Hello, Greg.
How you doing, sir?
Yeah, very good, Greg. Thank you for calling. Yeah, go ahead.
I can remember the 90s when they did the fiscal thing, and people didn't like it then because they were cutting stuff. But, I think the old attitude is we have to start trying to live within our means. And right now we're not. Right now it's like it's out of control. And unfortunately, we've got to do something. I know you have Moody's credit rating system. Okay, so if you have a bad credit rating, so you go to borrow money, it's going to cost you even more money to borrow money.
That's right.
And I just seems to me, like you said, people are not taking it too serious. I guess I don't know, but it just seems to me we've got to do something here. This is you look at all the provinces, like in Nova Scotia here, the provincial government and say we're going to cut stuff. Well, they were up in arms. They didn't like it.
Yes, that's right. Huge protests. Huge protests, right? Yes.
But you got to do something, though. You can't buy everything in the store. And BC's doing it. My buddy who lives out in BC, they're in the same boat too. And now New Brunswick. Well, they're going to put a toll at the thing to try to make money. You can't blame them. And it's getting to the point where someday we're going to have to say enough is enough. And putting up a hedge fund, well, okay, maybe so. I got extra money, but I'm going to be using when I want to move from here to go somewhere else. So I'm not going to be putting money in that. But I'm just saying is that not everybody has extra money these days. Maybe they're the few and far between. Maybe the ones that have rich, yes, they have money. But the normal folks, little money that they got on side,
sure,
we're going to keep it for something else.
Yeah. Well, how many news stories have we seen over the last couple of years about the percentage of Canadians who are, whatever it is, 2 weeks away from living on the streets, right?
Well, and me and my wife, we've got pensions, and the pensions aren't going up, but everything else is. So we got to live within the means. So any extra money we put aside if we need something, okay? Not going to put money in a hedge. I'd love to put money in there. It'd be great, but I just don't have to, and I'm not going to do that. But I think everybody else might be in the same boat. I'm not saying it's true, but a vast majority might be in the same boat, But we got to do something. I remember back in the 90s when Paul Martin and that bunch were there. We got to do this. We got to tighten our belt. And they did things. People didn't like it, but they did. Okay?
Yes. Yeah.
They did it. Even Stephen Harper, everybody goes it. But right now, it just seems to me they're throwing the playbook out the door, and we're, You got to buy. And yes, like I say, giving money to foreign aid, like Ukraine and stuff. I get it. Well, you're talking billions and billions of dollars. And I think a charity starts at home, maybe. Just saying.
Well, as I say, it's $55 billion a year in interest payments on that debt, sir. It's more money than the federal government gives to provinces like yours in Nova Scotia to help pay for healthcare. $55 billion in interest, just in interest. It's, think about it. It's more than $1 billion a week, just in interest on the debt. But do people care, is what I wonder. 1-833-668-2577. The latest breaking news coming on News Radio. Government finances, government financing, the government creating a sovereign wealth fund, the government set tomorrow to reveal the books, open the books, and tell us where things stand on things like the size of the budget deficit, the interest payments on the national debt of $1.3 trillion. That's what we're talking about today. Guy is in Airdrie. Hello, Guy.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. How are you?
Good. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not a big analytic person, but I know a little bit about money. It's all a smoke show. It's all smoke and mirrors. Using borrowed money and pretend like it's a fund, like, we just came into a windfall or a lottery. We're just borrowing money. This is 100% about people that believe in this, and they're going to send in money and say, hey, that looks like a good idea. I'll put in a little bit of money here of some. That's what it's all about. It's all about the people that are going to put a few more nickels and dimes into the system, and Carney's going to use that to try. How do you start saving a fund when you owe, like you said, $1.3 trillion in money? You need to pay down what you owe first. Like people that owe a whole ton of money on books on their house, you don't just put that aside and decide to start saving a ton of money. You need to pay down your bills and get a little control when you have a little money on the side. Then great, you start saving it.
Okay.
That's how I see it anyway, just a smoke show.
Sure. So you won't be putting any money into the Canada Strong Fund? You don't want to become a shareholder?
Well, like I say, that's the whole point of this storyline. They're not putting any money. They're borrowing money to get people to buy in and send money.
That was actually the first question during the news conference is you're running, budget deficits, and yet you say you're going to put $25 billion into this fund. Where are you getting the $25 billion?
Yeah, it's just another way of saying, let's borrow more. That's just all it is. Call it a fund. It sounds better. It sounds like, we got money on, coming in somewhere.
Right.
It's just borrowed money. It's all it is. Just a different way of saying Canada's going to borrow more. That's all.
Gotcha. Okay. Does it bother you? Does it trouble? It sounds like it troubles you a little bit that we're going to have a budget deficit again in the tens of billions of dollars. Maybe it's not 78 billion, so maybe it's 68 billion. Does that bother you that it's so large?
Yes, of course. Like I say, I believe, and I'm not some investment guy, but the more you borrow, you weaken your dollar. The weaker your dollar, the more everything costs money. If you have a super weak dollar and you need to buy bananas from somewhere else, anything that comes in from somewhere else, and you have a weak dollar, of course everything's gonna go up. So the more you the more you borrow, the more you weaken your dollar. The more you weaken your dollar, the more inflation goes up. That's how I see it anyway.
Okay, very interesting. Canadian dollar 73.45 cents US today. What's really interesting to me, and thank you for bringing up the dollar, I'm just going to point this out. The Canadian dollar used to track very closely the price of oil. Here you have the price of oil in the last 6 months because of the situation in the Strait. The price of oil is up 58% in the last 6 months. The Canadian dollar is up 2% in the last 6 months. Barely moved at all. That's interesting. Guy, thank you for your call. First-time caller there from Airdrie. Let's go to Nova Scotia. Keith is in Nova Scotia. Hello, Keith.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Keith. Yeah. Good to hear from you.
Hi. Thank you. I'm going to wait until tomorrow and see what's going on with this budget thing before I can comment on that sovereign wealth fund. I don't really understand it, so I can't really comment on it.
All right.
But I can say about the debt, how we might reduce the debt.
Sure.
By maybe.
Maybe.
Go ahead.
I'm open to hearing your ideas, sir, on how you think the government could save some money. I'm always open to hearing those ideas. What's your idea?
Well, my ideas have probably been way said over and over again before I'm saying it. I just think that maybe some of the salaries that the politicians are paid, Ottawa, and even in provincial, maybe they could take some sort of a pay cut. I know that's been said so many times, but maybe if they had a taste of what everybody else in this country has to live off of on the average Canadian,
right?
Maybe if they could get a taste of that for a year and reduce their salaries and cut it back to something maybe what the average Canadian earns in this country, that might wake some of them up and realize that, you know what, people just can't afford to, and this putting money into this fund, which again, I'm not going to comment on too much because I don't really understand it. But where do they expect people to get this extra money from? Is that okay for people that have lots of money? Maybe that works out. They understand. Maybe they can do it. And
yes.
I think that maybe some of the money that we send foreign aid, that's a big chunk of money that goes overseas. Now,
it is.
I say, I've got nothing against, you've heard this before. I don't have anything against helping other countries, but the money that's been sent over the years to these countries, that's taxpayers, that's your and mine, our money. And I think we should maybe think about that and say, we need to help somehow get ourselves squared away in this country with our people and somehow manage to cut some of the spending just by doing things that other people do, like making meetings over Zoom or whatever it is, instead of sending a plane full of people.
Sure.
Plane full of people.
Yeah.
You got to pay for their food. You got to pay for their hotel. You got to pay for their airfare. That comes out of my pocket. Why can't they just do it within?
Very good. Yeah.
That's
okay.
it.
Thank you. Yep. So an MP in Ottawa would make about $200,000 a year. It's a little more. I think it's about $206,000 a year. If you're made a cabinet minister, you get a $99,000 raise. Let's round it up. Call it $300,000, $305,000, $306,000 a year. That's for your representative in Ottawa. For your members of the Legislative Assembly in Nova Scotia, if you're just a poor, toiling backbench MLA, you're making $115,000 a year. Is that too much to be an MLA? If you make it into the cabinet, you get an extra $60,000 or so. And the premier, on top of the $115,000, gets another $115,000 because they're the premier. It's about $230,000 or so. Just so you know. I'm Rob Snow. Government finances are topic of the day. Sovereign wealth funds, debt and deficit, all that fun stuff. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
The Canada Strong Fund. The Prime Minister is going to create a sovereign wealth fund for Canada. It's going to be called the Canada Strong Fund. What do you think of that idea? And the state of the government's finances. A $1.3 trillion national debt, an annual deficit in the tens of billions of dollars, and $55 billion in interest payments on that national debt. Does that bother you at all? Government finances are topic of the day. It'd be a big news story this week. Gord in Calgary. Hello, Gord. Thanks for calling, Gord. Yeah, good to hear from you.
A couple things. Yeah, nice talk on your show. First time, by the way.
Thank you.
A couple things. One, you have a problem in government. It's called you have too many employees not doing anything. And that's not just federally. That's every single level, right down to city governments. It's ridiculous. We all know it. And there isn't a politician since Ralph Klein left that doesn't actually address those sorts of things. That's number one. Number two, we're paying, what did you say, $1 billion or $4 billion a month. $4 billion
$55 billion a year. $55 billion a year
go.
is the number, yes.
Okay. So let's call it $5 billion a month. That's over $1 billion a week.
That's right.
$150 million a day in interest.
Crazy.
Think about that, folks. Nobody does.
Crazy.
25 billion wealth. It's just poppy. I don't even know. And Rob, I don't even have to hear what it's about to know it's just smokescreen crazy.
Smokescreen crazy.
It's smoke screen crazy talk. And it will come out tomorrow, and liberal people go, oh, my God, this is great. And I'm not a liberal. I'm not a conservative. I'm a nobody, because none of them tell us the truth. All of them sort of angle everything for their own lying programs to get reelected. Every single party does it. Number 4, very quickly, first-time caller, so I get a little bit of leash here.
Sure.
If anybody ever crosses the floor again, they must give up their seat, not have a by-election, have it vacant until the next election. Will that ever happen? Of course it won't, because you have politicians that are lawyers making the laws to dupe the stupid sheep, us, and we just go, oh, I'm so mad at this, and then nothing ever happens. We have a ridiculous system that is built with a bunch of people, autocratic people. We pretend it's a democracy, and we're the serfs that just pay the bills. And we're so dumb, we don't even know what we're paying. We don't even know that we're paying, what did I say, $150 million a day? A day.
Okay. All right. Gotcha, sir. Gotcha. Got to run. Gotcha and got to run. Thank you for being a first-time caller. All right. Yeah, it's $55 billion a year in interest payments. Again, more than the federal government sends to provinces like Alberta to help fund healthcare. Yeah, the federal government does do that. Rick is not a first-time caller, but he's in Dartmouth. And we love hearing from him, too. Rick, you're on the air. All right, let's try Barry. Where are you calling from, Barry? Are you in Halifax?
Yeah, I'm in Halifax, Rob.
Hi, Barry. Yeah, good to hear from you, Barry. Go ahead.
I think the first thing we got to do is get rid of Carney.
Get rid of Carney. Okay.
Yep. He's spending money like crazy. In fact, he ran out of ideas, so he is inviting a bunch of CEOs to meet with him so they can come up with more ideas as to how to spend money. I don't hear him say anything about the deficit or the debt. I'm just surprised, not that I voted for him, but I'm surprised as, a guy with his background is not a little more concerned about the interest rates and the debts.
No, it doesn't seem too concerned at all about it, really, in all honesty.
I got 13 grandkids, and they're going to be in real bad shape. If he wanted to spend a little bit of money, or a little more, whichever way you look at it, he maybe should fly across Canada this summer and see all the forest fires that are burning, and put some money into creating more of these 515 water bombers that they're building out in Calgary that have been ordered by all kinds of countries except Canada. Until just recently. Yeah, Winnipeg ordered 3, but they got to wait until 2032 to get them.
It's crazy.
So I wouldn't mind if he spent some money on doubling that production.
Gotcha. I just did some quick math because the national debt, everyone's share is $31,000. My share, your share, and the share of your 13 grandkids is $403,000. And on behalf of all of Canada, I thank them. Thank you for having them cover that bill for us in our government's large. Yes, 1-833-668-2577. Lots of lines available, lots of time to fit you in today on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
On the government's finances and the plan to create a sovereign wealth fund, what the Prime Minister today called the Canada Strong Fund or the People's Fund. More of your calls at 1-833-668-2577 to Waterloo now. Dave is on the line. Hello, Dave.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Dave.
I'm calling about the quote wealth fund. Canada doesn't have any wealth. He's setting this up with borrowed money, probably. You mentioned a $1.3 trillion debt. That's half of that, at least, has come from the Liberals and over the last 10 years.
$1.3 trillion.
1.3, yeah.
Yes.
So half of that, I think, has been run up by the government of the Liberals in the last 10 years. So I think the whole thing is a joke and a diversion.
Okay. The Carney government says it's a chance to, build Canada strong, to make investments and for everyone to share the wealth from those investments in things like nation-building projects, or whether that's expanding a port in Montreal, or maybe building an energy facility on the West Coast, or the Alto high-speed rail network. You see no merit in any of that?
Where's the money coming from?
Well, the money will come from, in part, the government. $25 billion. Borrowed money. Borrowed money.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister's favorite word is catalyze. We're going to catalyze this. We'll put money in, and then other investors will put money in. Maybe doesn't sound like you're going to put money in. Not you. No. You could become a shareholder, sir. You could have a little bit of the action.
I'd rather be a shareholder of something that's going to be more profitable.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Sure thing. Appreciate it, Dave. Okay. Dave's not convinced on the merits of this sovereign wealth fund. Countries all over the world have them, folks. Newfoundland and Labrador has a sovereign wealth fund. Alberta has its own sovereign wealth fund, right? The Heritage Fund. Now we're going to have one at the federal level as well. Pat is in Kitchener. Hello, Pat.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Pat. What's your opinion?
Good. Sovereign wealth funds, I think, are generally a good thing, but I think that they have to be applied in the right circumstances and conditions. And our debt to GDP currently in Canada is around 110%. So what that means is that, if you're a family making $100,000, you're spending $113,000 or $110,000, and what you just done is you logged into your brokerage account and you are borrowing on margin to invest another, $25,000 into investments that you hope will appreciate. But in the event that market conditions deteriorate, you're not in a position to withstand them. And so you could get margin called, and the government is simply going to raise our taxes if and when they get margin called. And the other problem I have with this is it's going to be managed and administered by another Crown Corp. Now, I worked for a Crown Corp, and I worked in private markets in finance, and I can tell you that private investments are far, far better at making investment decisions and are far more productive than Crown Corporations.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Thank you for your calls in the first hour. Let's keep it going in hour number 2 of Talkback. The latest breaking news is coming up next here on News Radio. Yeah, welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback, the Monday Talkback. Government finances will be a big story this week, and that's what we're talking about today. There's a major announcement today from Prime Minister Mark Carney at an event in Ottawa, announcing that his government is going to create Canada's first ever sovereign wealth fund. It's going to be called the Canada Strong Fund. It will be endowed with $25 billion of your money. We want to know if you think that's a good idea and where you think the money should be invested that would offer the best bang for the buck for Canada. And the Prime Minister says, hey, if you have some extra cash lying around, you can invest in it too and own a piece of the action. You could be a shareholder in the Canada Strong Fund. Is that something that interests you? Do you think this is a plan that has some merit? Is it a good idea? What do you think? Then there's the government's books. Going to get a look at those tomorrow during the spring economic update, what's known as the mini budget. We know that the annual budget deficit is going to be in the tens of billions of dollars. We know that the national debt is darn near $1.3 trillion, and that the annual interest payments on that debt amount to $55 billion a year. But do you care? Does it bother you? Do you think spending should be cut? If you do, what kind of spending do you think should be cut? Where would you cut spending if you could cut spending? 1-833-668-2577, hour number 2 of Talkback. While I wait for a few more calls, the backdrop for this announcement today in Ottawa was the Canada Science and Technology Museum. And the Prime Minister made his announcements and then opened the floor to questions. There were many. We'll let you hear a few of them. Roll the tape.
This is our country. It's your future.
The government's running deficits and cutting spending across the board. So where is this $25 billion going to come from?
Well, the first thing, I won't front run the Minister of Finance too much tomorrow. But there will be good news tomorrow with the spring update on the fiscal situation, the government's performance against our deficit targets, the government performance on getting spending under control, and the government's performance at the main time, and this has been core to our strategy, which is to spend less, get spending under control, so that Canada can invest more. And what today is about is ensuring that as Canada invests more, Canada as a country, the Canadian private sector, foreign investors in Canada, that all Canadians share in the benefits of that. We have ample resources in order to do so alongside. And remember, last point, and I'll hand back, is that there's a series, and this is what governments have done over the years, series of measures that governments are taking to create the possibility of these projects. We're doing that on a different scale now. And now we're making sure at the same time that all Canadians benefit.
Follow up. You keep referencing the Canadian Pacific Railway as a benchmark here, and that was funded by private investment.
Yep.
But a lack of transparency around that financing led to one of the earliest political scandals in Confederation. Yep. So I'd like to know about the transparency on this fund. Who is going to manage it?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm glad you raised it, because there are lessons in all respects on how, from our past and from the specific example. And I drew out some of the most important ones about partnership with Indigenous peoples, full partnership with workers, and full participation of Canadians alongside. This will be a independent Crown corporation, reports to Parliament, arm's length, as I say, independent, full disclosure, professionally managed, and the investments that are made will be clear. The objective is to grow wealth for Canadians over the long term.
Okay, so there you go. He says it goes right to his government's main goals. Get spending under control. He says there will be evidence of that tomorrow. Get spending under control. We're accomplishing that so we can invest more. And one of the ways we're going to invest more is through this vehicle, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which involves the creation of a new Crown corporation. 1-833-668-2577, and you can get a piece of the action. Apparently, we'll get more details on that tomorrow as well. Aaron is in Red Deer. Hello, Aaron.
Oh, hey, Rob. Hey, I got an idea for saving money across Canada, and I think it's going to be a bit of a hot take, but I think that all MLAs and MPs' salaries should be tied into the average salary. So, for example, the average salary in Canada is about $68,000. That's about a $50 million savings right there. Give them the incentive to represent the people and push the GDP of Canada and get people back into office that aren't necessarily career politicians, but people that want to serve their local communities, their provinces, and their country, not for trying to enrich themselves and enrich their own wealth.
So but what did you say the average salary was? About
average salary in
8,000?
Canada is about 69,000, somewhere in there.
69,000. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
And then you've got MPs that are making now with their pay raise $217,000 a year.
Right.
That doesn't seem right to me. I don't think.
Most cabinet ministers making $100,000 more than that. So
absolutely.
$300,000.
And as far as the PM salary, I'm okay if the PM gets a little bit more because we want to put our best foot forward as a nation. So absolutely, we should pay for somebody who wants to take that job. I certainly wouldn't, but I really do think that their salary should be tied into what the average Canadian worker does. And I think that would kick a lot of these folks out and start making people that want to go in there and do responsible decisions, people that know what Canadians are struggling about, to go in there and help out Canada rather than necessarily themselves and their party.
All right. Interesting. Thank you. There we go. We are underway for Talkback. Yes, as mentioned, ordinary MPs in Ottawa, in excess of 200,000, cabinet ministers more than 300,000. In Nova Scotia, members of the Legislative Assembly, about 115,000 to start. A little bit more than that in Alberta. It's about 127,000, I believe, for MLAs in Alberta. And in Ontario, they're getting a raise up to $157,000 to be an MPP in Ontario. He says, cut it right down. Whatever the average salary is in Canada, he says about $68,000 a year. That's one idea that's out there as a cost to rein in government spending. If you have any more of those, we're open to hearing them. On Talkback, hour number 2, off and running here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So Canada will get its own sovereign wealth fund, the Canada Growth Fund, the Canada Strong Fund, and you can own a piece of it if you have any money laying around. Dig into the cushions of the couch. You could have a piece of the Canada Strong Fund. Meantime, we'll get a better look at the government's books tomorrow. Tomorrow is the spring economic update. And the government is hinting at progress being made on whittling down the budget deficit, but we still have a national debt of about $1.3 trillion and annual interest payments on that debt of $55 billion. Government spending is our topic of the day. Look, while I wait for some calls, every single line is available right now. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. On this sovereign wealth fund. Okay, this is one of the big news stories of the day. The Sovereign Wealth Fund, the Canada Strong Fund, Canada's first nationwide sovereign wealth fund. Of course, other countries have sovereign wealth funds. A couple of provinces have similar funds, Alberta, Newfoundland, and Labrador. The federal government will put $25 billion into this fund. And then it is hoping that it will get matching investments from other big players, like other sovereign wealth funds or big pension plans or institutional investors. And as I said, you'll be able to put money into this fund as well. And you can have your own little piece of the action and benefit, if you will, from your equity, your ownership stake in this fund, is how the Prime Minister described it. What do you think of the idea? What do you think of the idea? It's an interesting idea. I would say it's very on brand for someone like Mark Carney, Sovereign Wealth Fund. Mark Carney, the international banking figure, the former Wall Street banker, the former chair of Brookfield Asset Management, the former governor of 2 central banks. In that way, it's very on brand. But is it a good idea? The original $25 billion, as callers have pointed out, will be borrowed money. If you think it's a good idea, where do you think the money should be invested? If you're going to make investments in the Canadian economy that would really pay long-term benefits for the country, offer Canada the most bang for the investment buck, Where do you think that money should go? And would you put your own money into it? Now, it's an interesting idea, but there are reasons to be cautious about an announcement like this. There are reasons to ask questions about it. The Prime Minister took many, many questions today about it. About just the English language questions alone were about 20 minutes. He took them all. I mean, for example, one of the questions I have is, why another government agency? Why another Crown corporation? Why do you need one more government agency? The Prime Minister says, well, it will be arm's length from the government. But let's face it, whoever runs this sovereign wealth fund is going to be appointed to that role by the government. I would suspect quite likely by the Prime Minister himself. He probably has somebody in mind already. These are the circles that he travels in. Like, I'm not going to be named to the investment board of the Canada Strong Fund. Eric in Cole Harbour is not going to be on the board of the Canada Strong Fund. Rick in Dartmouth is not going to be on the board of the Canada Strong Fund. Karen in Calgary, I don't suspect Karen in Calgary is going to be on the board of the Canada Strong Fund, or Tom in Cambridge. It's going to be someone with impeccable government connections. And the frustrating part is this seems to be the trend that we've seen from this government over the last year. The anniversary of the election is tomorrow. To solve what the government sees as a problem with the government, it creates more government. We have the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, which could do a lot of the same things that the new Canada Strong Fund is doing. To try and build more homes and build them faster, the government creates yet another housing agency. It already has a housing agency that's been in place for decades and has 3,000 government employees in Ottawa, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. But now, no, we need another one. We have to have Build Canada Homes as well. We're doing the same thing with procurement for defense equipment. We have tens of thousands of employees working at the Department of National Defense, but now we will have a new defense procurement agency. And we created the Major Projects Office to speed up major projects, but the Major Projects Office has simply been poaching employees from other government departments who are working on the very same projects. And now it's a sovereign wealth fund, yet another government agency to build Canada strong. We are going to build another government agency first and foremost. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577 to have your say on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Been talking about the creation of a sovereign wealth fund for Canada. Also, the state of the government's finances. Glenn in Calgary is up next. Hi, Glenn. Thanks for calling, Glenn.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
I'll make a very short statement about this. Everything that Carney has done since being in power has always been in some way benefit to his party members and friends, but not the people, even though that's who he's supposedly helping. This is just another bureaucracy to pay friends of his that, and if you invest in it, you'll just lose your money. I think that's all I have to say on it. Have any questions?
Yeah. Well, I'm not so sure about that. I don't know if I would take the premise of your question quite like that, but is it something that you would invest in? He says Canadians would have the opportunity to invest in it and that we'll learn more tomorrow about it. You could have an ownership stake, if you will, in an LNG plant or whatever was deemed to be in the national interest. It could be, as I say, the high-speed rail plan for Quebec City to Toronto, or maybe it's they're putting big money into expanding the Port of Montreal. Maybe you could have a little ownership stake of the Port of Montreal, Glenn. What do you think about something like that?
If I want a stake in any of those things, I'll buy shares in the company itself and not give the government anything.
Okay. All right. All right. So you have your suspicions. I appreciate that, Glenn. Thank you so much. And if he raises a valid point. What projects would get the financing from this fund? Right? What do you think? Maybe people with close connections to the government or the best lobbyists on speed dial, insiders, right? Who know all the right doors to knock on in political Ottawa. Take, for example, the Trudeau government created something similar to this, the Canada Infrastructure Bank. It was created to do something very similar. In that case, it was to lend money to people who wanted to develop infrastructure with the thinking it would catalyze investment. Hey, the Canada Infrastructure Bank will be in and be able to provide financing, and therefore other big investors would jump in as well. But think about a recent project that involved the Canada Infrastructure Bank, a more than $200 million loan for 3 dozen wind turbines in Nova Scotia. I mean, it's been all over the news in Nova Scotia about who is backing that wind farm project. They're all well-connected Liberals or relatives of former heavy-hitting Liberals in Ottawa, Liberals with names like Bryson and Dingwall. So I can understand, why the suspicion would be there. So, is the money in this fund going to be deployed where the returns will offer the most bang for the buck? Or, and this is one of my concerns, and it is a real concern, does it morph into a slush fund that would go into the pet projects of the government, pet projects backed by people with connections close to the government, the people who know the right people, go to the right parties, and hire the right lobbying firms? That would be a concern for sure. What about you? 1-833-668-2577, and have your say on Talkback here on News Radio. A big announcement from Prime Minister Mark Carney today. Canada will create its own sovereign wealth fund. It's going to be called the Canada Strong Fund, and you can get in on the action and buy a share, I guess, if you will, in the Canada Strong Fund. Where should the money go? Are you interested in doing that? Does this sound like a good idea? Tomorrow is another big day in Ottawa. We get a look at the government's finances. Think deficits, debt, interest payments on the debt, the state of the economy. Giorgio is up next on Talkback. Hi, Giorgio.
Good afternoon, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, Giorgio. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just commenting on this sovereign wealth fund that
yeah, what do you think of the idea?
I like the premise. I do. It'd be great if each province had a sovereign wealth fund, and that way that money could go to the province. Where is this money going? Is it going to out east and this high-speed rail? I don't want to contribute to that. They get enough of the West's money. This is the thing that I have a conflict with. I like the idea, but I believe every province should do that and have its own sovereign wealth fund for its own province.
I see.
Basically, bringing up the only province GDP for that province and help build that province, not where this money is going. Because let's take for instance Carney's record. He's only supporting stuff out east. He's not supporting anything out west. He's put all these memorandums of understanding, and nothing has happened. Germany has built its own refinery off the coast of Germany, and it took them 3 months. We can't get something done in 2 years. So no.
Right. Okay. You're afraid that the investments. You're afraid that the investments will flow where the Liberals are more popular. Is that a concern of yours?
Yes, I would say that.
Okay. All right. Fair enough, sir. Thank you very much. You don't want anything to do with investing in high-speed rail from Quebec City to Toronto. What if some of this money did go to, say, building a pipeline to northern BC or something like that? Would you be supportive of that if it actually came to pass? I think he's gone. Okay, that's too bad. All right, Giorgio, I appreciate your call. I mean, another question is this the government's role at all making investments in private industry, or whether that should be best left up to private investors. Leave that to, the big banks, the investment banks, the pension funds, the investment arms of the pension funds, and not the government, because the government doesn't have a very good track record of picking winners and losers. Clearly, though, the Prime Minister thinks it's going to be a winner, or he wouldn't be going down this road. And we're all going to go down this road now. We want to know what you think of it. The Sovereign Wealth Fund of Canada. Canada's Strong Fund. Maybe it is a winner. Rob in Calgary is up next. Hi, Rob. What do you think, Rob?
Hey, Rob. Well, as a Canadian, is that $25 billion not already our money?
Of course. Yes.
So
yes.
Would we not
every last dollar of it?
Yeah. No, I think similar to the gas tax. I think the money is best kept in the taxpayers' pockets. I'm pretty sure we know the best way to spend it. So, that'll keep the economy going. I think what they should be more concerned about is the economy. Unemployment is quite high, very high, and crime. Unfortunately, it seems the crime rate is rising as quickly as the unemployment rate. I think that should be our bigger concern than investment. Investment's going to go on all the time, and if we have a strong country, I believe companies and corporations will invest in it as well.
Right. So the government's role shouldn't necessarily be creating investment funds, but rather create the environment that will see the private sector more readily invest in the country. Fair enough?
Well, yeah.
Create those conditions, right?
Yeah, and where I am, a lot of the business organizations say that, if they had their druthers, they wouldn't start a small business. They say it's just not worth it, for the time involved. You own a little shop, guy comes by, breaks the $4,000 window, that comes out of your pocket. You may or may not have insurance for it, that type of thing, and all the government red tape and everything. I think we got to respond to our small businesses more than anything.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Help out Main Street, not necessarily Bay Street and Wall Street. It's a great point that you raised, Rob. More of your calls are just ahead, and we'll let you hear a little bit of question period too. The day before the spring economic update, and Pierre Poilievre once again on the attack in the House of Commons about creating sovereign wealth funds and the state of the government's finances. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. It's Talkback. And this is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
The government and its balance sheet. The government creating a sovereign wealth fund today on Talkback with the help of people like Michael in Calgary, who's up next. Hello, Michael.
Hello.
Hi, Michael. What's your opinion?
Okay, so I kind of have two opinions on it. The one with Carney being the lead, I'm not sure I really trust the guy, considering that, here he is. He's saying Canadians should, invest in a fund, but yet he doesn't invest in Canada pretty much at all. And his family and his kids live and go to school in the States, so he's heavily vested in their economy, not ours. So I have a hard time with him asking for us to invest in something. And the other part is the sovereign issue is a bit ugly for me because, I'm a little bit older, but my family came to Canada the way many people did. They got a 3-month boat trip leaving England, and in return they were an indentured servant on a farm for a year. And so my great grandfather, worked on a farm for a year and then was riding down logs on the St. Lawrence Seaway trying to make a living, and he didn't swim. Those are the kinds of risks that they took. But those people left the UK and England because they hated the system and they hated the sovereign keeping them as serfs and keeping them in a caste system. So they left to be away from that. And I can't believe that anybody wants to be a part of sovereign anything. Anyways, that's of my thoughts.
I mean, I guess it's a sovereign wealth fund because the name denotes that the investments are made on behalf of the people of Canada. That's where the name comes from. That would be my understanding of it.
Yeah, I suppose it's just that it's that other meaning that bothers me a little bit. I know that at one point Canada savings bonds were a popular choice and they worked well. So it's, I like the idea. I just don't know if I trust the guy.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Michael. In Calgary, Emerson is up next in Calgary as well. Hi, Emerson. Good to hear from you.
Hey, Rob. Likewise. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good, Emerson. Thank you.
Excellent.
What are your thoughts?
Happy to hear. Well, my thoughts are very, very uninformed, but I had a similar notion to the Sovereign Wealth Fund a few months back. I was just kind of thinking that, it'd be nice if the government, if we could put our ballots in, our vote, so to speak, in how they should be investing money. And I had the idea to maybe, I don't know, if the government had some sort of a trading system to, take advantage of a lot of these things seen in the cryptocurrencies.
Okay. Well, tell me more about that. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think there's just so much technology overlooked that we could really get a leg up on the sort of debt just by taking advantage of the gains in crypto in a very low risk way.
Okay, so investments in crypto. The government seems very hot on data. It just keeps using this word data. Whether that means data centers, I'm not sure. Certainly data centers are a big thing right now. I mean, what do you think about something like that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything good in the realms of data centers, just the amount of energy they draw and the amount of water systems they pollute or run dry. Sure. I'm not such a big fan. I would put no vote towards any sort of data center being invested in.
Right.
I understand.
You seem to think there should be some democratic component to whatever this portfolio is made up of.
100%. It's got to be democratic. I see.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Okay. Thank you, Emerson. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Why don't we listen to this came up, not just the creation of the Sovereign Wealth Fund, but what will be revealed tomorrow by the federal finance minister when he opens the books for everyone during the mini budget, the spring economic update. And play a little bit of question period here. The questioning, of course, coming from Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the opposition. Prime Minister was not in the House during question period today. The finance minister was François-Philippe Champagne. Curtis, if you will, please do the honors.
More costs, more taxes. This Prime Minister is just another Liberal. This Liberal government doubled the debt, doubled housing costs, doubled food bank lineups, and the previous Prime Minister left behind an outrageous $31 billion deficit for this fiscal year. Since that time, the new Liberal Prime Minister has been spending at even higher rates and putting it on the national credit card. That means the bankers make more and Canadian workers and seniors keep less. Will the Prime Minister at least cap the deficit at Trudeau's $31 billion, or will he break through that limit and put it on the credit card?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I know the Leader of the Opposition is looking for good news. Well, I have good news, Mr. Speaker. You'll have to update his CUPE cards because, Mr. Speaker, we announced the first Canadian Sovereign Wealth Fund, Mr. Speaker. A fund to build Canada strong, a fund that will allow Canadians to build this country like never before, to invest in projects across this country, to allow Canadians to invest alongside the government, to make sure that we all benefit. Mr. Speaker, this is the essence of a Canada for all. We're building together, we'll benefit together. Mr. Speaker, let's build Canada strong together.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. The question was for the Prime Minister, who's again in hiding, and instead what we got is a man talking about a sovereign.
I don't know if it's metaphorical. If it is, it's a bit of a stretch. But I just want to warn the honourable member who knows better to avoid those kinds of illusions. He may continue.
Mr. Speaker, you need to actually have wealth for a sovereign wealth fund. What this Liberal Prime Minister is proposing to do is use the credit card in order to take $25 billion and put it into a Liberal slush fund, Mr. Speaker. This after the Liberal government doubled the debt and gave us the worst inflation in 40 years. This Prime Minister is spending more taxes, more costs, more of the same. Will he put it all on the nation's credit card again tomorrow?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Speaker, let me help the Leader of the Opposition. After all, it's Monday. Let me help him, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the International Monetary Fund just said last week that Canada is the strongest fiscal position of the G7. Mr. Speaker, the Canadian economy has the second fastest growth in the G7, growing almost as twice as the one in Germany, almost twice as much as Japan, almost 3 times as our colleagues in Italy, Mr.
You get that. It's like they don't even live in the same country when you listen to the two of them debate in the House. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
The state of the government's finances, the creation of a sovereign wealth fund with $25 billion, as many callers have noted, $25 billion of borrowed money to create a sovereign wealth fund. Let's go to Keith, is in Turner Valley. He's been waiting patiently. Thank you, Keith, for waiting. You're on the air, Keith.
You. Yes, thank you, Rob, for allowing me to express myself on such an important matter. Canada's style of government is supposedly a democracy. And that, over the years, I've learned, should be by the people, for the people. And when we have our elections, and especially lately, the person that enters the PM's office forgets about the people and pursues anything but issues for the people. And I wonder, whatever happened to the referendum? In my opinion, Rob, government money management should be balancing the budget, not investing in a highly visional wealth fund such as being proposed here. So I'm not in favor of the government being involved in investing the taxpayers' money for profit. I believe that they should look after their budget. And thank you so much, Rob.
You're more than welcome. We didn't really get much into, the desire to balance the budget, and maybe that's reflective of the mood of the day, because not too many people seem to be all that interested in debt and deficit, even though I would point out the fiscal picture is not great in this country. I mean, it's really not great anywhere. It's not great here either. It's one thing to say, well, we have the best fiscal capacity of the G7 or the fastest growing economy of the G7. You look around the G7, it's, kind of like saying, well, you're the best horse in the glue factory. And the numbers are truly eye-watering, everyone. The national debt of $1.3 trillion and counting. It grows by the hour, every hour on the hour. It grows by $110 million a day. That's money that our government has borrowed and is paying interest on, interest payments that keep going up year after year after year. It's $55 billion a year these days, which is about $1 billion a week, just interest payments on the national debt. We'll find out the latest deficit number tomorrow when the Minister of Finance delivers that highly anticipated spring economic update. Big news story tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for your calls today. The latest breaking news is coming up next on News Radio.